Chapter 6. Caleb stood me up so he could move out of the chair. He gave me one last kiss.
Meet me at the bar in a bit. I have a feeling I might get wrapped up in this.
I nodded. The tournament director escorted the audience into a separate room off to the side. The police arrived at the site within 15 minutes. They began to let people leave one by one after they gave their personal information and were asked a couple of questions. I waited until the end. I watched as Caleb talked with Grayson Miller, Jason Biggs, and the tournament director. Each one was wearing a different version of the same stunned expression. From where I stood, I could see the medical team move around the man on the floor. A slight gap gave me a glimpse of the man. I noticed a gambler hat and realized it was the man with the gambler hat from the previous day. The one Remy had said was bad news. He was sprawled on the floor, but there wasn't any blood. The EMTs moved him onto a gurney and rushed him out. I wondered if he'd had a heart attack. I gave my information to the police and was released. I headed to the bar to wait for Caleb. Caleb spotted me at the bar after he finished with the police and casino management. He quickened his pace to dodge Jessica. She was hot on his tail, buzzing in his ear. I could hear her terse comments from where I sat.
You're going to ruin your reputation. You can't kiss a regular girl on air.
He stopped abruptly.
That's funny. I was under the impression I could kiss who I wanted. A man died tonight, and my prize was stolen. Can't you give me a break?
Not when you have a reputation to uphold.
That's a reputation you made for me, not one I wanted.
He said, but a small smile escaped.
It was fun in the beginning.
He turned from Jessica.
Nadia, let's go.
I grabbed my purse. Where are we going?
To celebrate, of course.
His lips curled into a sly grin.
If you're still up for the wager, we can start our weekend.
I followed him through the casino. So the guy is dead?
Yeah, I think so. The medical team wasn't getting a response.
What happened to your money?
Oh, that's no problem. I already have a check.
Did you know the guy who died?
A little. He's a hot-headed player.
Remy told me he was bad news.
Who's Remy?
Grayson Miller's driver. Caleb stopped.
Is there something you want to tell me?
What do you mean?
Are you seeing Grayson?
That's none of your business.
It is if you're coming with me this weekend.
I would hope Grayson would have recognized me at the event you dragged me to if I was seeing him.
Good point.
He slid his hand down my back, drawing me closer.
However, I barely recognized you when you were in a dress and all dolled up.
But you did. Caleb leaned in and nipped my bottom lip.
You never answered about this weekend.
You said if I watched the final table, you'd forget about the wager.
The problem is I can't forget about the wager.
Those are your hormones talking.
Most likely, but they're telling me to make a new wager.
No way. There isn't anything I want that would make me wager with you.
I'll take that challenge.
He grinned as he ushered me out the door. The valet jogged to Caleb's Porsche. He tossed Caleb the keys after he parked at the curb and hopped out. Caleb dropped the keys into my hand.
Care to wager now?
You would wager your Porsche?
If you win, you keep the Porsche. If I win, I want a weekend with you of my choosing, and I pick the location.
Location? I gulped. A dirty, sexy smile took over Caleb's face, making me break into a cold sweat.
I have plans for you.
Crap. I was actually beginning to think this was a good idea. My car was broken, and I had no money to fix it. Caleb was a temptation waiting to be explored. I swallowed. Isn't this a little close to prostitution? He chuckled.
Don't cheapen it. I want you, and I know you want me. There's nothing wrong with this. I could easily get into your bed, but I want to win you.
You can't get into my bed that easily. Caleb's eyes sparked as he lifted the keys out of my hand and ushered me into his car. He drove me home as my foot nervously tapped. Why am I putting myself through this? Yes, he's unbelievably, mouth-wateringly hot, and he's a likable guy, for the most part. I don't need a mouth-wateringly hot man. I have poker, Gus, and the chapel. My insides groaned at my life laid out on the operating table for all to dissect. As it laid there, it didn't look very appealing. Caleb pulled into a parking spot in front of the chapel and turned off the engine. He was out of the car and around to my side before I even realized we'd arrived. He opened the door, and I slid out to follow him. I could stop this right now. I could tell him that I didn't want him or his car. I could tell him a lot of things that were untrue. As we stepped up the final stair to my apartment landing, he slid my keys out of my pocket and opened the door. "I don't know what you're trying to prove," I said, stepping into the apartment. Caleb shut the door behind me, taking me into his arms. He leaned his head down and captured my mouth with his. His lips parted mine. I couldn't let him win this. It's a challenge to him. I'll stay strong, I thought. Unfortunately, I moaned at the same time. His warm hand had traveled up the inside of my shirt and cupped my breast. His thumb circled around my nipple through the flimsy bra material. I can't stay strong. This isn't going to work. He's going to win. He always wins.
Do you need more convincing?
He asked. I glared at him. No.
So the wager is back on?
Damn, I wanted him and his car. I nodded.
Meet me at the casino tomorrow at 3. I'll be in the high-stakes room. We'll play one hand. Winner takes all.
I'll be there.
Good, walk me downstairs. I'm afraid of bumping into Frankie.
Frankie is harmless.
So you say. He was eyeing me like I was candy last night.
So was I. I escorted Caleb downstairs, where he gave me a light kiss goodbye. He hopped in his car, hopefully to become my car, and drove off. I turned to hoof it back upstairs.
There you are,
Frankie said. I jumped and clutched my heart. Did you need me?
We need to go over your routine for the gig tomorrow.
I rolled my eyes. What time is the show?
It's at 7, but you'll need to arrive a little early for a walkthrough and short rehearsal. Everyone there is professional, so there shouldn't be any problems.
What did you need me to do?
Just your crazy card-tossing tricks.
How many minutes do I have to fill?
They said 15, but you should have a few tricks up your sleeve in case the magician needs more time.
I'll do the boomerang, cascade, waterfall, 2-arm spread, the twirl, and I'll finish up with the one-handed twirl with the 3-card juggle in the other hand.
Have you learned any more tricks?
Frankie, I learned these when I was a teenager and had no life. He eyed me.
Nothing's changed.
I glared at him. I'll see you tomorrow.
Don't get huffy,
he said.
You're just mad because it's true.
You're probably right. There was no arguing with Frankie. I didn't have the energy to try.
Make sure to grab your outfit for the performance tomorrow,
he said, pointing to a garment bag hanging on the door. I'm afraid to look.
It will be perfect. We can use it again for future gigs.
Can you at least let me choose the gigs? I don't want to look like a fool. It's hard to play poker against people when they're laughing at you.
No need to worry. We are going to transcend poker. We are going to bring it to a whole new level of entertainment.
You're scaring me.
Trust me, I made this chapel a success and I can make you a success. Stick with me, kid. By the way, where's my Rocky outfit?
I groaned. I'll call Steffi and see if she can locate it. I grabbed the garment bag and trudged up to my apartment. I set the bag on the kitchen table. I didn't have the courage to open it. I took a taxi to the casino to meet Caleb in the high-stakes room. This was a room I rarely had the chance to see from the inside. While Caleb spent most of his time here, I was at the low-stakes tables barely scraping by. It would cost me a $100,000 buy-in to sit at the table in this room. Caleb was at the table with 2 cards placed upside down in front of him. His fingers shuffled his chips. He was in a hand with 2 other players, waiting for one of them to make a call. His eyes flicked to me when I entered, but didn't acknowledge me since he was still in a hand. I plopped down in an overstuffed chair in the corner and waited. The rules in high-stakes Texas Hold'em are the same as the ones on the casino floor. The difference is dealers here are allowed to modify rules as requested by players, as long as the table is in agreement. The players here are in their own type of club. They know each other and have fun, but they can be cutthroat serious too. They also come up with amusing side bets to liven the game. I had once witnessed these guys bet on whether player Jerry Reiger's mom had made him a pastrami sandwich or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. They were allowed to sniff his backpack and then had to make the bet. What I want to know is why a 38-year-old man needs his mom to make him a sandwich. I gazed up to find Caleb standing next to me.
Ready?
What are we playing?
High card.
Really? That's it?
Are you disappointed?
Well, it's not terribly original.
Should we take a vote from the guys?
We might as well. I'm assuming they're making a side bet on us anyway. Caleb grinned.
They've been talking about it for hours now.
Are you guys going to get on with it or what?
Jerry asked.
We're trying to determine what game we should play.
Caleb said. Quiet. Mike stood up and placed 2 empty glasses on the table and handed each of us a stack of chips.
Whoever can bounce the most chips into their glass wins.
Jerry said. Caleb turned to me.
Well,
I hesitated.
don't think you can do it?
He asked. All right, let's play. I can't seem to beat him at poker, so maybe I could win this. The guys at the table threw in their chips for the bet and settled back to watch. Caleb picked up a chip and bounced it, landing it perfectly in the glass. I slid a sideward glance at him. Have I just been hustled?
No,
He said with a smile.
I'm just lucky.
I bounced a chip, which sailed over Jerry's head. Clink. Caleb made another shot. I carefully aimed my shot and bounced the chip so it wouldn't fly off the table. This time it landed in Quiet Mike's glass with a splash. Does that count? I asked. Everyone shook their heads no. Clink. Caleb made another shot. A woman sauntered into the room. I knew of her but had never met her in person. Katerina Carvona was one of the few women to play high stakes in the boys' club. She didn't take any crap from them. It was rumored she and Caleb had dated for a while.
What's this?
She asked. She pushed back her long, dark hair. Her dark eyes rested on Caleb.
Don't interrupt, Kat.
Jerry said.
It's just getting good.
Her eyes were still on Caleb.
What are the stakes?
His Porsche or a weekend with Nadia?
Jerry said. Katerina smirked.
Didn't you already try that with me, Caleb? Only I was smart enough not to get hustled.
My spine flashed ice. I straightened to glare at Caleb, who narrowed his eyes at Katerina. She laughed at him and threw back her hair. Son of a bitch, I said. You hustled me. I picked up my remaining chips, tossing them haphazardly at the glass in the middle of the table. They hit the table, bounced, and then scattered. There, you won,
Nadia, you don't understand.
Caleb said. I snatched my purse and marched out the door.
Nadia, wait.
Caleb ran after me. I ignored him. He grabbed my arm, swinging me around.
Please hear me out.
You hustled me, and now you want me to hear you out? It's not so bad I was hustled, but the fact that you did the same thing with Katerina makes me queasy. Just let me go. You got what you wanted.
I didn't get what I wanted. I wanted you to be mine because you wanted to be, not because you were hustled.
You wanted to win me, and you did,
Not like this.
he said, pressing a ticket in my hand. One glance at the ticket, and I knew it was from the valet. What's this?
My Porsche. It's yours.
This is your guilt talking. I lost the bet because of my own stupidity. I'm not taking your car to make you feel better about the situation. I shoved the ticket into his front jeans pocket and turned to march away.
Damn it.
He growled. He grabbed my shoulder, swinging me around to face him again.
You frustrate the hell out of me.
I opened my mouth to reply, but he swooped down, kissing me hard. He held me in a tight embrace. I momentarily weakened, but pushed him back before I fell under his spell. "Leave me alone," I said, and stomped away. He let me go and didn't follow me. My shoulders slumped. I made my way to the front of the building to hail a taxi to go home. I had to dress for the show. Stupid show. Stupid Caleb. Remy was outside with the limo.
You need a lift?
"Thanks, Remy, but I can just catch a taxi."
Grayson said I should give you a ride. He thought you might need one.
"Why would he say that?" Remy's phone buzzed. He scanned the text message.
Hang with me for a moment. Grayson is on his way to a meeting. We'll be passing your place anyway.
"I don't think it's a good idea."
How's it not a good idea? You'll save money and ride in a limo. Plus, Grayson will keep you company so you don't feel like you're riding in a hearse.
That's the problem. I don't know Grayson. I spilled a drink on him, and then I bumped into him at the charity event. That's it. Plus, when he's near me, my insides turn to mush. I was already a swirling emotional concoction from my encounter with Caleb. I didn't need Grayson adding fuel to the potency. Grayson walked out the front door. Jason Biggs followed closely on his heels, chirping in his ear about the upcoming meeting. Steffi jogged behind, taking notes. Grayson registered me and smiled. His eyes softened and his smile was sincere. Damn if he wasn't wearing a suit that fit him perfectly, making him too close to heaven. Remy opened the limo door and ushered me in before I could protest. Grayson followed, with Jason shouting a final few words before Remy closed the door, leaving Grayson and I alone. "I'm sorry about this," I said. "I tried to tell Remy I could take a taxi." Grayson assessed me as I perched opposite of him.
Remy was acting upon my request. I heard what happened in the high-stakes room.
"How did you hear about it so fast?"
We have cameras everywhere. The security guards monitor the high-stakes room and several others. We want to keep our players safe, including from each other. Some of their side bets spiral out of control.
"Like the sandwich bet?"
That one was funny. I actually wagered on it. Most of the time I couldn't care less, but today was different.
Catching his eye, I shrugged. I was hustled. You can't make a living at gambling if you're going to be afraid of everyone. I learned my lesson. Grayson's phone rang.
Yes?
He asked into the phone. I watched as his expression changed. His eyes narrowed and his jaw tightened.
Where was he?
He gripped the phone.
I'll get Remy on it.
Grayson ended the call and gazed out the window. His eyes drifted to a point beyond where vision was needed. I didn't want to disturb him, so I sat still. It was the perfect time to watch him without him noticing my obvious ogling. He must have a serious flaw somewhere. No one can be so devastatingly gorgeous and not have a gigantic, hideous, secret flaw. I was going to find out what it was. That way he wouldn't be so damn tempting. But maybe this would be our final encounter. That would slam the brakes on temptation too. His eyes traveled back to me.
I'm sorry. I was lost in my thoughts for a moment.
It's okay. You're the one giving me the ride. A smile barely escaped the confinement of his lips.
What are your plans for the rest of the day?
I got conned into working as an opening act for a magician. He raised an eyebrow.
What kind of act?
Nothing interesting, just card-tossing tricks.
Sounds interesting to me. It isn't for Lupier, is it?
Yes, how did you know? He grinned.
Then I'll see you tonight. I have VIPs coming in for the night. They want to see the show.
You're kidding, right? I'm nervous enough. Can you bring them after my opening?
No, I want to see your act. Do you need a ride? Remy can pick you up.
I shook my head. It's okay. I know he will be busy with whatever problems you're having. Grayson's lips smiled, but his tired eyes betrayed him.
Problems come and go.
Are you still cleaning up the tournament mess?
Yes, were you there?
I was in the audience. Grayson nodded as though he might have already known.
I'm sorry I didn't see you. I was a bit preoccupied. You weren't hurt or anything, were you?
No, Caleb came to find me in the audience and stayed until the power came back on. He hesitated for a moment.
What made you take the bet with him?
You know my car problems already. He was wagering his Porsche.
A car was worth taking his wager?
At the time, I had a different opinion of him. If I did lose, it wouldn't have mattered. Now that I've lost and my opinion has changed, I'm hoping he'll be a gentleman and call off the wager.
Do you think he will?
I have no idea.
Will you go through with it?
I'll have to. He wouldn't back out giving me his car, so I have no right to back out unless he lets me. I smirked. But I'll make him suffer for it.
It wouldn't hold up in court.
Are you a poker player?
No, never enjoyed it.
There's a small thread of trust between professional poker players. It's very fragile. If you break this bond, you'll have a hard time working with professional players. It can be a tight-knit group, and you can find yourself on the wrong side of the table.
Didn't Caleb break the trust?
Caleb is in a league by himself. His thread is a little sturdier than most. Remy pulled the limo to the entrance of All Celebrities Chapel. "Thank you for the ride," I said. "I hope your day gets better."
It already has. Good luck tonight.
I smiled and hopped out of the door Remy opened for me. "Thanks, Remy. Have fun chasing down bad guys."
I always do.
Grayson leaned out of the limo.
Remy, don't forget to give Nadia her bag from the trunk.
A sly grin formed on his face. "That's not my bag," I tittered, hoping he would believe me.
I took it from you at the Naughty Shack, so it must be yours.
Remy said. Grayson smiled at me.
Is that the outfit you will be wearing for the show?
"Not on your life!" I shrieked, wanting to find the nearest hiding spot. Mer. Gus was sprawled on his back on the couch when I let myself into the apartment. He cocked his head to the side and let out a deep grunt. I filled his bowl with his ration. His legs raced, trying to right himself. He was finally able to flop over to one side and tuck his legs under him. It was like watching a nature show on upside-down turtles. "Have you lost any weight yet?" He casually sniffed my shoe, sauntered to his bowl, and plopped down to munch. My phone buzzed. Glancing at it, I read Caleb's name as it popped up on the caller ID. I tossed the phone on the table and slipped into the bathroom to take a shower. It wasn't about him hustling me or even winning. Okay, maybe a little. My biggest problem was Katerina. She snared her meat hooks into every man. I had hoped Caleb would have seen through her. But realistically, what man could? She was beautiful and had an air of naughty girl to her, and she dressed in shamefully uninhibited clothes. Women hated her. Men want to score with her. Caleb would have been no different. I should have known not to entangle myself with a poker player. This was going to turn into the hot topic of the tables for months. Caleb would appear as the sexy bachelor that his image already conveyed, and I would look pathetic for falling into such an obvious trap. I yanked out my costume for the gig, still thinking about my pathetic status. I sucked in air as my stomach plummeted a 20-story drop onto concrete. "Frankie!" I screamed. I held out the 2 scraps of material. There was nothing there, no dress, no nothing. It was a sequined thong bikini. Frankie burst into my apartment armed with a broom.
Where is he? I can take him.
He jumped around the room, peeking behind the door and couch. Gus gave him a twitchy eye stare, but hunkered down to eat. "No one is here. What is this?" I squeaked, holding the costume between my 2 fingers.
You gave me a heart attack, woman.
He barked, clutching his chest.
I was going to come up here and get all freaky on his ass.
"I refuse to wear this bikini."
It will make you memorable. We need more gigs.
"Frankie, I have to concentrate on the tricks. How can I do that when my cheeks are hanging out?"
How am I supposed to know your brain and butt cheeks are connected? I have another costume you can wear. It's part of my own collection, so don't go stretching it out.
I rolled my eyes. He scurried down to his apartment to find the costume. Within a few minutes, he returned and was pinning me into a short, gold-sequined dress. "Why can't I wear underwear?"
You'll see panty lines.
"Frankie, you're pinning it too tight."
Can you breathe?
"Yes."
Then it's not too tight.
But my boobs are popping out.
That's good. Just don't pick up a card if you drop one. You'll have your ass hanging out one side and your boobs out the other. We don't want to give that kind of a show.
Frankie finished my dress and straightened my hair flat. He glued false lashes onto my eyelids and dusted me with sparkly powder. I couldn't help but think this gig was a terrible mistake. I was able to descend the 2 flights of stairs in the tight dress, but I had to shimmy the dress back down over my butt by the time I reached the bottom. Frankie drove us to the theater. He floated in through the backstage door with an air of showmanship. None of the security guards stopped him. I followed him in, not nearly so theatrical and much more apprehensive. There was nothing special about the backstage. A few people milled about, hanging lights and moving props. It was an open area with nothing much there except a collection of dust bunnies floating around corners.
Ah, Lupier,
Frankie gushed. The man turned to Frankie with a cold stare. He was in his late 40s with dark hair and eyes. A touch of gray dusted the sides of his hair near his temple. His looks were handsome, classic Italian. He was only a few inches taller, but gave off a presence that he was larger than life. He was thin, but his hard angles gave him the appearance of being well-built. I felt my blood pressure rise as I saw Katerina standing beside him. Her eyes widened at my approach, and then acknowledged me with a slippery smile.
You couldn't play poker or bounce chips, so you thought you would try a new career? Did they mention you need talent for this sort of work?
Her lips curled. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "Not enough men left in the casino to ensnare?" Her narrow eyes slashed into me, but then she turned to Lupier with a dazzling smile.
I'll let you get back to work. I'll wait for you in your dressing room so we can talk.
Lupier nodded and turned to cast a speculative gaze over at Frankie.
Yes, I'm Lupier. How did you get back here?
He asked in a thick Italian accent.
I'm Frankie Garza. You hired Nadia Wolf to be your opening act.
Lupier looked past Frankie and acknowledged me with a full-length scan. His mouth curved into a showman's smile.
You, my bella, are Nadia.
Yes?
May I see some of your tricks?
Of course. I snagged a deck of cards from my purse. This is one of the easier ones, I said, as I twirled a card on top of my index finger. I then flipped the card between my fingers.
Marvelous,
he said, but more to my cleavage than to me.
Make yourself at home. Refreshments are on the back table should you want them. I have to go rehearse with my assistants. I expect perfection with my assistants, which only happens with constant practicing.
I nodded.
Nadia,
Frankie said when Lupier left.
we have an hour before you have to go on stage. You should practice.
Remember, you're going to have to help me for the final number.
I know, I can't wait to be on stage. I'm so glad my jumpsuit still fits.
And boy, did it fit. He was stuffed into a white jumpsuit with large diamond stones sewn all over it. It had to weigh 20 pounds and was guaranteed to blind the audience when the spotlight hit it. I practiced like Frankie asked, though I didn't put my heart into it. I had to make sure I still had enough juice to go on stage and perform, especially with the finale I had prepared. He wasn't watching me, so I was able to relax without him hovering. After flirting with a wide-eyed stagehand, Frankie moved on to corralling the producer in hopes of scoring an impersonation gig. Watching Frankie kept me amused for a little while. But as I practiced, life as a dull and awkward teenager came flooding back to me. The hours and hours I'd practiced on these same tricks to perfect them for my friends who'd watched quizzically didn't put me in the mood to perform them in front of an audience. I have to admit, I'd had good friends, but they'd never understood my love of cards, and I never understood their love of shopping, magazines, and makeup. So while they were doing their thing, I did mine. We would meet up again so I could hear the latest gossip and exploits of the teenage world that I missed. Maybe I had practiced for Jaden Park too. He hadn't been the hottest guy in school, but he'd ranked in the top 10 and was the only boy I had a crush on. He organized the school's talent contest, and I had immediately entered to be closer to him. Little did I know all those hours of practicing would be wasted because he was in love with the theater and men. But I hadn't known his preference until I tried to kiss him after the talent show. Having placed second in the contest, I went in for a kiss. I was aiming for his lips, but I smooched the hand he shot up to halt my advancing lips. I had stopped practicing after the incident. I had also stopped trying to kiss boys. I shook the past out of my head and continued practicing. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched Lupier and his assistants getting ready. I was excited to see they had some spectacular stunts and tricks in their routine. Maybe I'd be able to see part of the show after my act.
Ladies and gentlemen,
The announcer boomed over the sound system.
please put your hands together for Nadia Wolf.
A round of applause burst from the audience, and my brain and all bodily functions seized. Frankie pushed me toward the stage right after I told him I was going to kill him. I walked purposefully to the center of the stage and gazed over everyone's head like I was taught for my grade school performance of Henny Penny. When I stepped onto my mark, the spotlights shined on me, blackening the audience in a heavy cloak. Sweat began to bead on my skin. I gulped. This was what hell must be like. Sensuous, gripping music floated through the speakers. I tried to relax with the music and warmed up with the easy tricks first. I let the cards fall like a waterfall from one hand into another. My movements swayed to the music. I twirled the cards on my fingers and then juggled 3 cards in the other hand. The tricks became more difficult as my routine progressed. As my heartbeat was lowering back to hundreds instead of thousands of beats per second, the tricks became easier to execute and more fluid. I could hear clapping, though it sounded as if it was in a tunnel far away. My nerves must be clogging up my ears. A commotion of arguing voices behind the curtain jolted me from my intense focus. Cards burst from my hand like a bad joke of 52-card pickup. They showered down onto the stage and the audience in the first row. This can't be happening. I bent over to grab at the cards when Frankie shouted from the side of the stage.
No!
He took a running slide to block me. It was too late. My butt was up in the air, making the dress pop up to my waist and exposing my posterior to the cameras and gasping audience as Frankie slid right past me. He turned on his heel and scurried to my side. In a flurry, he straightened me up, yanked my dress back down, slid me a new deck of cards, and then hurried off stage. As he stood me back up, a pin from the dress stabbed into me. I bit my lip to keep myself from crying. I had to refocus and get back into the routine, but all I wanted to do was run from the stage and hide under my bed. My hands shook as I fumbled with the new deck of cards. My face heated well beyond Nevada's hottest temperatures. I fumbled through the routine's last few tricks. I knew Grayson was out there watching my every move and ghastly mistake. The thought replayed in my head until all I could see was Grayson's eyes wide with shock at my horrendous performance. For the finale, Frankie brought out a metal pail filled with water. My fingers twirled a few cards, and one by one, I placed them on long, thin sticks with a pointed end. I tilted my head back and placed the end of each stick in my mouth. I bit the ends of the sticks to keep them steady, always careful so they didn't stop twirling. This was the trick that landed me second place in the talent contest, but this time, I was adding a new element: fire. While the cards stayed in motion, I reached up and lit them on fire with trembling hands. I had already pre-treated the cards so they wouldn't turn to ash right away. Now I wished I'd rethought adding fire. I could only let them twirl for a few moments before they would naturally stop. As I reached for the first one to toss into the water, a gasp from the audience startled me. At first I believed it was for my daring act. I was redeeming myself from the brink of blooper reels when I caught a movement from the corner of my eye. Something rammed into me from the side, knocking me to the floor. My head slammed into the metal bucket. I was conscious long enough to see the flaming cards fall toward me.